till we start recording, I think, which.
Any second now. It's okay, we're on YouTube, just starting the cloud recording and then we're good.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Can I have the roll call, please, Mrs. Reed?
Yes. Lauren C. Slack,
Here.
Dale Heim,
Here.
Gillian Emmert,
Here.
Jason Bashaw,
Here.
Christy Cooper,
Here.
Wayne Dietrich,
present.
John McGinley, Anto,
Here.
Carol Cunningham.
Here. It's 7:10, it's 7:11 p.m. An executive session for legal and personal reasons was held before the meeting at 6 p.m. 5, presentations, audience input on the agenda.
There are no comments at this time.
Okay. 6, administration board discussions and report. 6A, academics and education. Dr. Chris Lutz-Demling.
Good evening, everyone. We had an incredible start to this school year, and I believe that that is a tribute to everyone's thoughtful and detailed planning efforts. As you know, we used the feedback from last year's end of the school year parent and guardian survey to guide our fall reopening plans. And because of that feedback, we have new technology, new curricular programs, and many new procedures in place for the current school year. We just finished day 5, and we're really proud of what we have accomplished to date. And even though we are working through occasional challenges, the collaboration and teamwork has been exceptional. And I have no doubt that we're going to continue to troubleshoot successfully. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Kathy Cottrin, our coordinator of instructional technology, so that she can provide a brief technology update.
Hello. So when the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, I'm going to tell you it took a village to get over 1,600 iPads out. I just like to recognize some people who were instrumental in helping Wayne and myself. The beginning, to start off, mid-July, we received a truckload full of iPads and cases. Lois was very helpful in allowing some of the custodial staff to come over, and we got them off of the pallets, unboxed them, put them in the boardroom. So all the custodians that help, we can recognize a little bit later. We had a student helper, Derek. I'm gonna leave his last name just because we're live. And literally for 2 weeks, he unboxed iPads, cases, and bags K-8. And that's all he did. And without his help, we still would be unboxing. Joanne Hefner, she's an instructional aide at the middle school, volunteered her time. She also helped unbox, unpack, throw things away. Lois's daughter, Melanie Dahl, also volunteered her time. I think she enjoyed getting out a little bit and hearing some banter between Wayne and myself. and Carla Frislin, who kept us all organized, kept us on track. And I will have you know, everything was recycled. Not one thing went into the trash that shouldn't have. So she was very diligent on that. And within a 2-week period of time, we were able to get all the iPads out into the buildings. And like Christina said, we're only on day 5, so we're getting little bumps in the road, but for the most part, we've been able to resolve some issues, blame some issues on Google. That's always fun to do. And I don't know, Wayne, if you have anything else to add.
I would just say that, there were a few hair-raising moments. I may have mentioned previously the critical self-service app that we use to distribute apps. At the beginning wasn't working due to, I guess, an update that Apple pushed out, and they had to work it out with between Apple and Jamf. But fortunately, the big issues like that, we got worked out, and we are still dealing with a few minor things here and there, but nothing that I think we can't handle. And I would just like to second the compliment of the organizational skills of Carla Frislin. It's easy to sort of get disorganized when you have as many devices being set up as we did, but she is excellent. She labeled the boxes, sorted the boxes, and just between that and her other duties, did an outstanding job.
Thank you, Wayne and Kathy. Now I'd like to take this opportunity to turn things over to the building principals so they can just share a brief school opening report. Mr. Dauberman.
Yep. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We had fantastic isn't even a strong enough word for it, but we had a fantastic opening. And again, it was due to all the planning and the people who set all this up and helped make it work well. Our entry and exit plans, I think, went very well. We had help from the Catasauqua Police Department, to name a few people, in addition to a lot of our staff that helped organize the morning. And we were able to keep 14th Street open and running without stopping the buses from coming in and out. And Chief Kish especially helped us organize that lower lot where we had 3 lines of cars, 3 wide, coming into our parking lot and then coming up our driveway. The parents and students followed the direction and the plan to a T, and it just worked really well. By the end of last week, it was flawless and smooth and just trucking right along. And today was no different for the exit and entry plan. So that was great. Lunches were super efficient. Dan Mothersbaugh and Lisa Nagy in our cafeteria had everything set up exactly the way they told us it was going to be. And our kids followed the directions, and we maintained safe distance, and we were able to distribute the food quickly within the half hour that we had to feed the kids. So no problems there. Transportation this year was the smoothest it has ever been. The addition of the bus cards and actually the assigned seats, believe it or not, made things easier and smoother. And I was a little worried about that, but the drivers checked every kid on. There were no bus stop issues at all the first week entirely, and even today, every student got where they were supposed to be on time, and it just was unbelievable. Our online staff, a few of the teachers that we had to hire to take care of that massive number, we have about 206 online kids at Sheckler. So those new young ladies that we hired fresh out of college are doing a fantastic job, along with Megan Murphy and Jamie Gallo. They're meeting, they're discussing, they're working through the bugs and the issues. They've contacted almost every single parent to date to get the kids up and running, and they started meeting with classes today. So that is going so well. The iPads and Wi-Fi, they're coming along and they're up to speed now, thanks to Kathy and Wayne and all the people that were mentioned ahead of them. So we appreciate that. And of course, Bob and Christina have been there the first 5 days to support anything that we've needed. any questions we've had. So along with the entire team effort from every department you can even think of, including the janitorial staff and the maintenance crew, it allowed us to do something that is just, just slight of incredible as far as I'm concerned, because of all the moving parts. If you think about it, we're running 2 schools parallel to each other right now, the in-person school and the online school, and it's working so well for us. So I'd like to thank everybody for their help.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Melissa?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. And I'm almost a little hesitant to say this out loud, but like Eric, we are doing exceptionally well. It is unbelievable how smooth everything is running. We had changed our traffic flow for the arrival procedures for parents when they drop off their students in the morning, and that is going exceptionally well. We do have the help and assistance of a police officer who's there in the morning at 7:30 a.m. and he's been a great help with trying to direct some of the traffic, but the parents have really caught on quite quickly. And so by the 3rd day, it was like we were already a couple months into the school year with the procedures. So it is running so well. We did great with the point of entry, where we had identified 5 different points of entry for our students when they arrive on campus, and that's going exceptionally well. Students enter the building and they know exactly where they need to go. And procedures are running smoothly for our cafeteria. We have 2 locations. We have the gymnasium and we also have the cafeteria downstairs. Dan Mothersbaugh was really instrumental in helping with those procedures and setting up the flow of our serving line. Kids really have caught on quite quickly to the procedures. Everything is going smoothly. It's amazing how quiet our cafeteria lunches are. Our cafeteria monitors are loving our lunches this year. Also, the building itself, in terms of how we laid out the procedures within the building of walking patterns and social distancing, would like to really thank Lois for all her help and support in making sure that our building was ready for our students to enter, and for our teachers, and making sure that our teachers are safe and have all the necessary products that they need, such as the plexiglass and the gloves and the hand sanitizer and the wipes and so forth. That's been very instrumental in helping our staff and our students be safe. We also have some procedures within the classroom, such as using QR codes and, to see the nurse, and for the nurse to, will go out in the building and make visits to the classrooms just to check in on certain students that may need some medical assistance throughout the day. So a lot of our kiddos are not walking around the building. They're, maintained in the classrooms, and they're doing quite well. Would like to also thank our custodians for preparing our building and making sure everything was clean and ready for our kids and also for our staff. Just really like to also thank Bob and Christina for their support, the leadership from the top, how it trickles down to the building and then to our staff has been really instrumental in making sure that we're ready to open up our school for our kids. And I think it's just very testimonial to the fact that everything is running quite smoothly. And, parents are very supportive. Our staff is very supportive. Our support staff has been very instrumental as well. So just all around, it's just an exceptional start to the school year. And just like to thank everybody for their support.
Thank you very much, Melissa. And finally, Adam.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My words are going to sound the exact same as Mr. Doberman's and Ms. Minselman's. We're off to a fantastic start, very smooth start considering all the changes that we've done. I'm in a little bit of disbelief. We spent a lot of time planning for what could go wrong on Monday, the first day of school. And after the first 15 minutes, not one thing that we were predicting that could go wrong went wrong. I think that's a testament to everybody's hard work that they've put in to making this very successful. Our transitions in between classes have been very smooth. Students have done an excellent job. Teachers have done an excellent job. Our cafeteria transitions, we had to add a 4th lunch this year. Everything has gone fantastic in terms of kids getting up and moving, in terms of kids all facing the outside direction and staying 6 feet apart. Everybody's done a great job. I want to say again, our custodians have done a phenomenal job in a very short time preparing to get the desks ready in classrooms so that we could have safe distance in there. And our teachers have done a good job with that. it was great walking around on Thursday of last week and actually getting into classrooms. And I got to go into an English classroom where the English teacher was using students in the classroom, and they were collaborating with students who are at home synchronously on a device. And they were making Google slides, and they were doing it together. And it's just, here we are, the fourth day, and we've already got kids collaborating, whether they're at home or they're in person. And the staff has done a phenomenal job picking up on that. Our freshmen have done a really good job figuring out how to use Canvas, which is new to them. There's always a couple adjustments first to high school altogether, going into a new environment. And here they are rocking and rolling with the best of us, just moving forward with a new platform and everything. And very proud of them. And I'm hoping that great things happen over the next 4 years with them. Technology has been as smooth as I remember it, and it's because of Wayne, Cathy, Carla, and all the others who helped us get it set up. Anne Marie's done a great job with this. We have new iPads this year, and I'm happy to say that right now, knocking on wood, we've had some minor issues, all stuff that can be fixed very quickly. Usually just restarting the iPad takes care of it. So I met with our virtual teachers today. They're doing a phenomenal job. They said our students have done a very good job of getting with them. We've actually had a good problem that came up that we just weren't anticipating last week. We had a couple students who were starting to feel a little ill. So instead of coming in, they let us know they were going to patch in virtually. So they didn't miss a class. They just stayed home. Everybody was safe, and they were able to use the tools that we had provided, and they didn't miss a beat. And one person that I just really wanted to thank on top of everybody, honestly, is with us doing all 5 days with a virtual option and an in-person option. And with LCTI, one of our partners, doing a hybrid with last names, it's definitely created some confusion for all of us involved with transportation, especially in the middle of the day. And Dave Cressman has been absolutely phenomenal in helping us trying to figure this out and move forward so that we could get the kids transportation, get them to and from places based off of last names, make sure they could get home in time and not miss virtual courses. So I just wanted to give him a huge shout out, as well as everybody else who's done a phenomenal job of getting us ready. You guys all know who you are.
Thank you, Adam. Our school reopening truly has been a team effort, and we've hit the ground running, and we are looking forward to a smooth rest of this school year. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lutz-Demling. 6B, Finance, Mr. Spengler.
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham. Really, the only item I'd like to focus on tonight in the area of finance is relative to a bond refinancing scenario that we discussed a few months ago. As you know, annually, or really even more often, Brad and I talk, and from PFM, our financial consultant, and we look regularly at our financials collaboratively, and with the goal of always looking for ways, how can we save the school district, which is really the taxpayer, some money. So, these are really unprecedented times with some of the bond rates and some of the savings that we can capture. We've been doing this, for a couple of years in a row, and there's even more savings to be had. So at this time, I'm really going to turn over to Brad. Brad, if you'd please provide a general overview into, basically what we're thinking right now with this kind of multiple step refinance as a first step. I think we will then look for the board to consider in October a resolution to, move ahead and go from there. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Brad. If you'd be so kind now, Brad, to say a few words. And Wayne, you can start that presentation there, please. I think it's linked.
Great.
It's not really a presentation. I think it's actually the document.
Right. Well, good evening, everybody. I always appreciate my visits to Catasauqua, but I guess we're doing meetings this way nowadays, and I'm learning how to use Zoom as best as I can. So hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay and follow along. So talking about—
I'm sorry, sorry to interrupt. The link doesn't seem to be functioning.
Wayne, okay, Wayne, I just sent you another document.
Okay.
My apologies, Wayne.
No problem.
Somehow I think about the successful opening of schools is a little bit more exciting than municipal bonds, but I'll try and do my best for the board.
Brad, this is really a kind of a two-step refi that we're looking at this time, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. Again, as you mentioned, Bob, there are really four things at play here for the district. There's the two bonds, the one that was done in 2015 and the one that was done in 2016, become callable or optionally able to be prepaid for savings in February of 2021. But we can start the process now and look at potentially trying to refinance some or all of those different bonds. The 2013s, the 2013As, the 20 are also in the mix as well to have some potential to do some refinancing. But as was mentioned, interest rates continue to be at very, very low levels. We kind of had a little bit of spike in our market when the pandemic hit. It's hard to believe I've been working from home for almost 6 months now. It's just incredible to think about what's been going on. But really, as a lot of the markets have been trying to react to, what's going on in the world and so forth. Interest rates continue to stay quite low. That's the cover page that Wayne has up. The next page is kind of an outline that talks about what I mentioned as well. But this is a chart that you have grown to see from me over time. There's three of them there. The one I'm going to focus on is the bottom chart, the one at the furthest most bottom, if you're able just to scroll up a little bit more. And that kind of graphs what I call the index, the 10-year index of municipal bonds, really since the beginning of January of 2019. You can see that the trend for rates continued to go down, and there was that spike there in March due to the pandemic. It was quite a tumultuous couple of weeks at the end of March that we were dealing with, but as stimulus came out of DC, the market seemed to settle. And as you can see on that bottom chart, rates really hit an all-time low towards the middle or end part of last month. We've crept up just a little bit lately, but still, if you look at that historical picture, we're at really very, very low levels, which is why, as Bob mentioned, we get in touch and talk regularly about what opportunities might be available for the district. So if you'd be able to scroll to the next slide, this is the outline that I had mentioned. It just talks a little bit about what I've already talked about in words. So if you can't fall asleep later and you want to review what was talked about municipal bonds, it kind of lists those things, the bonds that are available to be refinanced. That there might be a two-part strategy that I'll describe in just a little bit more, just a minute as we go through it. And then the bottom half talks about that parameters resolution, that resolution that the board could consider at the next meeting, where you would authorize the refinancing of those bonds. It would set forth a lot of the different provisions that need to be set forth for federal tax law purposes, as well as state law purposes. That's something I would coordinate with your bond counsel, Fox Rothschild, and obviously Mr. Nur. We would get that prepared for you if you wanted us to do so at your next meeting. These are the next page, that page number 4, I guess I'll call it, has a lot of the yellow there that you see. Those are the listing of the bonds that you currently have outstanding, municipal bonds that currently have outstanding. And the yellow ones are the ones that I've described, the 2013, 13As, 15s, and 16s. Those are the ones that we're really targeting. The ones with the most savings are the 15s and 16s. The 13s are shorter and smaller, so there's not as many savings, but the reason we would like to include them in the refinancing plan is it will allow you more flexibility, as I work with Bob and Lois, to structure the savings in the years that you need them most. I think that the target right now is to get as much as we can in this year's budget, next year's budget, because there's so much uncertainty out there. But that's the main reason that the 2013 and 13As are in there. On their own, they wouldn't produce a lot of savings. But if you put them together in a package with the 2015s and 2016s, there is some use for those bonds for the refinancing plan. So just so before we get on this page, I think a lot of you have seen this. The top half of the page are your gross principal and interest payments by bond issue and by fiscal year. You might look at some of these and say, oh my goodness, there's some balloon payments. But no, if you go to the far right, you'll notice that your debt service is pretty level when you add it all together. And that's good for budgeting and planning purposes, as well as it's a requirement under state law. The bottom half nets out any dollars that you're getting from PlanCon, although PlanCon is still a big question mark for projects going forward. For those that you've qualified for, you continue to get paid your plan comment, and that's the plan. But so you're still getting a couple $100,000, maybe $250,000 a year or so in plan comment. And that's the reason the numbers on the bottom half are a little bit lower than the top, just because we net that subsidy out. So I think the next page is really going to put an executive summary together for you as to what we're thinking and what the potential savings are. As Bob mentioned, we're talking about a two-step plan. The one thing that we have to remember under federal tax law is this thing that we refer to as bank qualified. And bank qualified is a fancy term for saying that if your bonds are bank qualified, you can get lower interest rates because certain buyers get certain tax incentives for having those bonds. So to the extent we can make a bond bank qualified, we try to do so to take advantage of that opportunity. When we're talking about interest rates this low, the benefit of them, we're talking 0.15 to 0.25%. It's not a full percent or 2% or anything that great. But when you're talking about millions of dollars, if you can reduce your rate even by 0.25% or an eighth of a percent, that's a good thing to try and look through or think through. Earlier this year in January, you may recall we did a refinancing together with some new money. So during this calendar year, and this tax incentive thing that I'm talking about is by calendar year, not school year. So earlier this year, we already did a borrowing. So we don't have the option to do bank qualified for anything in 2020 still, but we will have some advantage in 2021. There is some other things going on in the world. As you're quite aware, on November 3rd, there's a rather large election that people are talking about, the presidential election. And I don't pretend to predict what's going to happen to the market depending on which candidate wins, but I know that something's going to happen. So as we talk through this process with the administration, we talked with Bob, we said, listen, maybe the thing to do is to two-step plan. We can't qualify for the bank qualified rates in 2020. We already did a transaction. Maybe what we should do is, since we don't have that option, refinance a certain amount of the bonds this year, try and get ahead of locking the rate before the election. If we can possibly do it, we're gonna try and speed that through as best we can. Take some of that risk off the table. And that would be the blue section, what we predict now. And that would also allow us to get some savings this year. So in the column 5 in the blue, we're hoping by the refinancing of this first step, we could save almost $225,000 in this year's budget, $85,000 next year's budget, and the rest of the years are about the same. There's some small savings going forward, but the lion's share would be received the next couple of years. Then if we did step 2, which would be the second part of the refinancing, this would be the one that would be bank qualified because it would be done in 2021. You can see the predicted savings for that. I've got a good $139,000 in this year's budget, $110,000 in the following year. As we've run the numbers, I'm not sure that if we see additional savings, it would happen in this budget year. I think it would happen in next budget year. But nonetheless, we wanted to try and see what we could do to get as much as we could for this year as well to help you through these difficult times. In aggregate, if you look at column 7 in red from the second step and column 5 in the blue for the first step, if you look at the bottom, the total there is over $700,000 of savings to your budget and ultimately to the taxpayers, as Mr. Spengler mentioned. So that's what we're thinking. I know a lot of you have done these before. I hope I didn't take too much time, but I would be happy to answer any questions and go over next steps. Or Bob and Lois, if there's anything I missed that you wanted to highlight, I'll be happy to yield to you at this time.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you, Brad. I mean, that's a really exceptional overview. I appreciate the format. We are very familiar with the format, you know. We like it to be nice and clean and crisp, you know, moving ahead. So there's really no misunderstandings. I also appreciate, you know, the fact, Brad, that we tend to take a conservative approach up front. And, you know, we also monitor and, you know, we do a parameters resolution, I'm sure. You know, we go from there. So, but this will be in pretty quick order, this whole process. So this is, you know, maybe a little more quickly than some others that we've done. But we have met internally to, you know, get the data together to begin the process. And I think we'll be, you know, right on target. So I appreciate, Brad, everything you do for us.
Of course. If there's any questions that come up along the way, if you get in touch with Bob or Lois, something you think about later, you have a question on, feel free to let them know. They know how to get in touch with me. I'll be happy to respond. But if until the meeting October 13th, I guess that'll be the next time that we'll be together, or at least I'll have the resolution worked out with Dave and Fox Rothschild to be on your agenda for that evening, so you could approve it, and we're off and running.
This is Don. I just got one quick question.
Sure.
And to either Bob or to Brad, how does this impact our rating? I mean, will it improve our rating as we're refinancing these, or does it stay the same or has no impact?
Right now, how do I answer that? I think this shows them that we have a plan to build up fund balance. I think Bob's done a great job in notifying S&P of this. As you know, we got a negative outlook switch to stable. I think it was last time, right, Bob?
Yes.
The issue that we're seeing right now is that although you might be, this might have what I would view a positive impact on your rating, what I'm hearing from a lot of my rating calls for our clients is COVID-19. Just the rating agencies are so concerned about how this is going to affect municipalities, schools, and how everybody comes out of this. They have been less than generous with upgrades, Don. They just have not been generous with them. In fact, in the last 6 months, I don't think I've seen any one of my clients get an upgrade. I've only seen moves in the other direction. Given what Bob and I have chatted about and the plan you've put together and how things have been really turning around at Catasauqua, I think that this will hopefully, if we can keep where we're at, that'll be good. Obviously, I'll beg for an upgrade. That's just what I do. But the COVID-19 really has kind of stymied a lot of my clients that have made tremendous progress as it relates to the rating agencies.
But I certainly do appreciate that, and I know I've talked with Bob about this before. It's not a short-term strategy. It's we just continually move the mark as we go on, and I certainly can understand how COVID is having an impact on ratings like that. So yeah, thank you.
Yep. Well, the one other thing that I did not mention that I should is, just as you probably are aware, hopefully my illustration showed, when we do this refinancing, we are not extending the debt. It's going to be paid off in the same amount of time. We're just basically, this is your basic refinancing where you replace higher rates with lower rates and save some money.
That was going to be my question. So we're not extending any payoffs at all. It's the exact same payoff dates.
Correct. That's
correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. All right, everyone be well. Yep, everyone be well, and we'll have this together for you on the 13th. I assume that's where everyone wants to go, and we'll get working on it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brad. Again.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
6C, Building and Grounds, Mr. Spangler.
Just really the only thing I'd like to emphasize in the area of building and grounds is that we have scheduled a stadium project design team meeting for next Wednesday at 9 a.m. I think I'm correct. So I did send invites out for that. Dale, Don, Carol.
11 a.m.
Oh, is that what it is? I'm not even sure.
From when I remember seeing, it's 11.
Okay. Let me just do a quick check. So that's the 16th. I have 9 to 11.
Mine says 9 to 11.
Okay.
Is that going to work?
I must have just saw the 11. Yes.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that's going to work for you because I do want everyone involved in it.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So we'll be doing some, detail work on the field house and, some of the details around the site. So that's where we're at with that. That's moving ahead, as planned on schedule. As far as we know, we're looking for a December design finish and bid documents out and a March construction start. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spangler. 6D policy, Mr. Nur.
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham. Good evening, everybody. I have to present to you tonight a revision of our policy 128 with regard to non-discrimination and our procedures for dealing with discrimination claims. As Mr. Hein already mentioned to me once before, he thinks this is the longest policy we've ever had. I fully agree. This is a policy that, as it was a 10-page policy in the past, and now you're looking at 26 pages. There was a monumentally large revision of the Title IX regulations by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights in May. It's actually already in effect, although I don't think too many people have been able have had the time to get themselves up to speed on this. And so I would like to walk through and request on a first reading of this tonight. And then if you would take a closer look at your leisure before we would look at it for a second reading in October, I would appreciate it. So let me just try to summarize what's going on in here. But again, a lot of this is are changes that are being made in response to this massive set of regulations. On page 1, where he talks about the policy, what you see there in the beginning paragraph is actually identifying a few more areas of the law where we want to be clear about that there's no discrimination that's permitted. For example, since the last time the policy was reviewed, there's a statute that was passed with regard to genetic information, that you can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of their genetic information. And there's some clarifying language about marital status and family status, and sexual orientation and sexual identity. So that's already in there. And again, to emphasize that we prohibit discrimination on our property, at school-sponsored activities, and on school conveyances that provide transportation. To the extent that we have
alert from handbrake, put down the cocktail.
To the extent that we have discrimination that occurs off our campus and that does not have an effect on our campus, we have less of an ability to deal with that kind of discrimination. So again, we state on page 1 that we are obviously opposed, and it's a policy of the district that nobody shall be denied of their benefits that are provided by our school program and activities due to prohibited discrimination. Now on the second page, we're again encouraging students and employees and third parties to notify us of discrimination and to file oral and written reports and complaints. It's always been the policy that we not permit anyone to make retaliation against anyone who is involved in this process, but we had to expand the language to cover some of the material that's in the new regulations, specifically that anybody who files a complaint or gives a report of a complaint or who testifies or gives evidence, anybody who assists or participates in any activities that we have, or even if they refuse to participate in any manner in an investigation or proceeding, none of those people can be retaliated against for those purposes. However, you retain your rights under the First Amendment, and it's not considered retaliation if we charge someone with a code of conduct violation for making a materially false statement in bad faith. Now, then the definition of harassment is clarified a little bit to recognize the world of electronic harassment as well. But I don't think you'll find much of that too disarming. However, on the next page, the definition of sexual harassment has been significantly revised by the new Title IX regulations. And so you see a lot of red striking out the old language and the blue adding in the new language. And there's really nothing more to say than, just take a gander at that. It really just completely revises what the definition of sexual harassment is. But nothing in any way that would really would make you not think of sexual harassment in the way you would colloquially think of sexual harassment. Then there's some additional definitions that were not there before, but that are in the regulations now and that we've added. So for example, on page 5, you see definition of complainant and respondent. The complainant being a person who is the alleged victim, and the respondent is being the person who allegedly was the perpetrator. And they're considered a complainant or a respondent, whether or not there's a formal complaint that's filed in the matter. Now, then we get a definition of what a formal complaint is. And so we're just distinguishing a little more in accordance with the current regulations, the difference between an informal report that is made, whether that's in orally or in writing, and a formal complaint that's made by or on behalf of the complainant or the victim. Unless there's a formal complaint, the full-blown process that we have in here does not take place. But we also then, if there's no formal complaint, can take disciplinary action against the perpetrator because they have due process rights as well. A lot of the regulations are trying to establish very clear procedures and due process for the benefit of both complainants and respondents, and to ensure that we treat both of them fairly. And because of that, there's an abundance of new language in here about how the procedures have to be formulated. There is also a definition on page 6 of supportive measures. And these mean things that are not discriminatory and disciplinary and not punitive, that you take in the course of investigating something before you've reached any conclusions about who's responsible or not. That really is trying to protect a complainant or a respondent while we're going through the process. So for example, it could include things like an order that the parties stay away from each other, that we change their scheduling, that we provide escort services, modifications of their work schedules, extend deadlines for course-related assignments, in counseling provided, things of that sort. So there's, again, as I mentioned before, there's a whole definition now of what supportive measures are. And as we'll see a little bit later in the policy, there are requirements to provide supportive measures. Supportive measures are to be maintained as confidential to the maximum extent possible, so long as they're consistent with being able to provide those supportive measures. Now we get to part 2 of the policy at the bottom of page 6. This is the delegation of responsibility. Under our current policy, we delegated the responsibility of being the compliance officer and the Title IX coordinator to the superintendent. However, because of the restrictions now on what a compliance officer can do and what an investigator can do and what a decision maker can do, it's not really a good idea to have the superintendent be the compliance officer anymore, because we still want to have the superintendent be the final voice making the decision from an administrative perspective. And so since he would be in that role, he cannot also be anymore the compliance officer. So I am recommending, and I've spoken to Bob about this, that the assistant superintendent be designated as the compliance officer. And I've just dumped a whole lot of work on Dr. Lutz Demley. I'm sorry. And we also have to make sure that we refer to the compliance officer as the Title IX coordinator anytime that discrimination on the basis of sex is involved. Now, of course, since there's other forms of discrimination as well, we're still using compliance officer rather than all the different statutes that they have. But these particular regulations specifically say that whenever there's a claim of sex discrimination, we have to make sure we refer to the person as the Title IX coordinator. And so we shall. Now, the delegation responsibility at the bottom of page 6 starts with notifications that the compliance officer has to make. These are to applicants for employment, students, parents or guardians of students, employees, and all unions or professional organizations with collective bargaining agreements or professional agreements with the district. So all those people, which are now larger than the universe we've had before, have to get certain notifications. And among the things that they have to get notifications are talked about on page 7. 1, the name, title, office address, email address, telephone number of the person who's the Title IX coordinator and the compliance officer. 2, a statement, and this statement is slightly different than the statement we made in the past, that the district does not discriminate on the various bases we don't discriminate. That is required by law, including Title IX, not to discriminate, and that inquiries about the application of that can be made to our Title IX coordinator and also to the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights of the U.S. Department of Education. And also a notification that the district has adopted this policy to provide procedures and process to resolve complaints of prohibited discrimination, which includes how to report or file the complaint, and how the district responds. And on top of that, as noticed on lines 30 and following on page 7, we have to prominently display those notifications on our website and in each handbook or catalog that we make available to persons entitled to those notifications. So while there's some of the things that we've covered in the past, the details of it are greater and broader and have to be provided in more locations. And I'll be happy to work with Dr. Liz Demling on how we implement all of this. Going forward, there's a note on page 8 of a list of rights that are not infringed. This is again from the new regulations, specifically indicating that there's nothing we're allowed to do in this policy that would interfere with anybody's rights under the First Amendment of the Constitution, the Due Process Clause of the 5th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution, or any other rights under the U.S. Constitution, or any other legal rights of a parent or guardian to act on behalf of a student, including in filing a formal complaint. Then there's a section on implementation, and this has gotten significantly broader than we had before, as far as what the compliance officer has to do to implement our general policy against discrimination. For one, you'll notice at the bottom of page 8, a significantly larger amount of material on training has been inserted to the policy in accordance with the new regulations. And this is the kinds of training that have to be given to an investigator, to the compliance officer, to a decision maker regarding how to investigate and handle all discrimination issues. On top of all that training, the particular training materials cannot rely on improper stereotypes of various categories of people and have to promote impartial investigations. On top of that now, you'll notice on page 9, starting at line 12, that the compliance officer has to maintain all training materials that are provided for those folks for a period of 7 years, and get this, must make all of those current training materials publicly available on the district internet website so that any member of the public can go look at any time they want and say, this is what they're training their people to do. There's some other minor changes on that page. And I think you'll be able to understand them clearly enough when you look them over. On page 10, you'll also find some additional requirements that the compliance officer has to do in implementing this new policy, including record-keeping requirements that they have to create and maintain for a period of at least 7 years about each investigation and methods of resolving each case that there was a formal complaint filed, and even where there was not a formal complaint filed, but a report was made of potential discrimination or harassment, or where we had knowledge that there may have been discrimination or harassment, of what actions that we took on the basis of that knowledge or report, including the reason why we conclude that however we responded was not deliberately indifferent, and that we took appropriate measures to restore or preserve equal access to our educational programs and activities. And if we didn't provide supportive measures to a complainant, why we didn't feel that it was clearly unreasonable in light of the situation and the known circumstances, why we didn't provide those supportive measures, why we didn't think it was necessary. So there's an awful lot that we have to document, and each and every time we have some suspicion or some report, even if it never even rises to the point where somebody files a formal complaint, a lot more paperwork that we are dumping on poor Dr. Listemlin. Now, as we go to page 11, we take a look at the complaint procedure. And I want to just let you know here that some of the materials that were provided in the new regulations, the regulations themselves only address sex discrimination and Title IX, which is a portion of a statute that deals with sex discrimination. However, it doesn't seem to me to make much sense to use a different set of procedures for other types of discrimination besides sex discrimination, when the same general considerations of due process and fairness to all parties apply in all circumstances. And so our complaint procedure and process that we have in this policy, even though some of it is only specifically required for sex discrimination, I have written this to apply as to the way we will handle all forms of prohibited discrimination and harassment. So if you feel contrary-wise, we should talk about that before the October meeting. Again, it starts out as we've done in the past, that we encourage students and employees to make reports to the building principal. And since the last time we did this policy, we now have a building which is not in a school building, specifically the district administration office. So I added a statement saying there, the quote the relevant building principal in that case is the Scheckler principal. So if any of our staff in the administration office want to file a report, they should file it with Eric. In addition, it's re-emphasizing that any reports that are made of discrimination or harassment under this policy are in addition to all reports that have to be made under the Child Protective Services laws. They still have to be made in a prompt manner in all cases. Now, in addition to our general plan of filing reports with the building principals, you'll notice some language starting on line 31 on page 11 that says, notwithstanding any of that information, any person can always report discrimination or file a formal written complaint of discrimination to the Title IX coordinator and compliance officer, and can do that in person, by mail, by telephone, by email, or by any other means that gets to the attention of the Title IX coordinator. And that the report can be made at any time of day, including non-business hours, by using the phone number or email address, or by sending a letter through the US mail. Now, again, then, what we had initially talked about in the preceding version of this policy was that that the investigation would then be made by the building principal. But because of trying to coordinate between, again, the roles of the coordinator and Title IX coordinator and the compliance officer versus the role of the building principal, again, if the report was initially made orally, or was made by somebody other than the victim, or was made in some manner that wasn't in a formal complaint, then the building principal or the coordinator or the compliance officer will try to inform the victim that they have the right to file a formal complaint, and notify them about the formal complaint procedure and how to use that. And again, we offer them the right to file that formal complaint with the building principal or the compliance officer. And if any of them are impartial, then there's other procedures.
Alert from mail, Brad Ramig.
Now, in addition, one of the concerns of the people issuing these new regulations was concerns about treating both victims, alleged victims and alleged perpetrators equally and fairly. So they want to make sure that the person who receives an oral or a written report is allowed to provide factual information about the complaint and the process of doing an investigation, about the impact of trying to seek confidentiality, and about the rights to file criminal charges, and about available resources besides the school procedures, such as domestic violence or rape crisis programs and community health resources and counseling resources. They can continue to make that information available to a complainant, but in all other respects, the person who receives a report or a complaint must remain objective, neutral, and professional, setting aside any biases in favor of one party or the other. Now, again, so we've talked about going forward and filing a formal complaint, but then as you'll notice, starting on line 41 on page 12, even if no formal complaint is filed, if there is information that comes to the attention of an administrator, they should provide that information to the compliance officer, and the compliance officer should conduct or cause somebody else to conduct an informal investigation if it doesn't appear that there's going to be a formal complaint forthcoming. So even if we aren't going to have a formal complaint and the formal investigation procedures that I'll be describing in a bit, nonetheless, if we have notice of something being a potential problem, we still have a duty to do an informal investigation on our own to see if there's a problem and then to deal with it. So you'll see some of that discussed at bottom of 12 and top of 13. And then you'll also see, starting on line 14, there's 2 paragraphs there that are in blue that talk about what some other things that the district might be able to do, even if no formal complaint is going to be filed by a person because they're concerned, for example, about somebody retaliating against them in some fashion for having filed a complaint against them. And so that just describes what some of those other alternatives could be available to us. And then at the bottom, starting on line 37 on page 13, again, one of the new requirements of the law is that as soon as the compliance officer learns about a report or a formal complaint of discrimination, so that's whether it's an informal or a formal complaint, the compliance officer has the duty to call the alleged victim promptly to discuss the availability of supportive measures that we talked about before. So they talk to that person, consider their wishes with regard to supportive measures, inform them of the availability of supportive measures, that those supportive measures are available, whether or not they choose to file a formal complaint, and also to explain to them what process is involved if there is a formal complaint to be filed. The compliance officer has a duty to implement appropriate supportive measures. Compliance officer also has a duty to take all interim actions that are necessary during the period until this whole process comes to an end, to make sure that while that whole process is going on, that there aren't going to be any further violations of the policies, no further discrimination and harassment. As you look at the top of page 14, again, in accordance with these new regulations, the regulators are extremely clear that we may not impose any disciplinary sanctions or any other sanctions on a respondent other than supportive measures before the formal complaint procedure is completed. However, there's an exception to that, to the extent permitted by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Subject to that, we may remove a respondent from our programs on an emergency basis as long as there's been an individualized safety and risk analysis that determines there's an immediate threat if that person continues in our program, and gives the respondent a notice and an opportunity to challenge that decision. And secondly, we can place a non-student employee on paid administrative leave during the pendency of a formal complaint procedure. Yeah, then general district obligations. This is a whole new large set of requirements that are specifically imposed to ensure, again, that everything is being fairly treated to all parties. So for example, throughout the whole procedure, one, we have to evaluate all relevant evidence objectively, including both inculpatory and exculpatory evidence. And that means both evidence that would make it more likely and evidence that most less likely that the respondent did the thing complained about. All determinations of whether a witness is credible or not may not be made based on whether the person is a victim or the alleged perpetrator or a witness. Can't base it on that status. 3, no person who's designated to be the compliance officer, investigator, or decision maker can have a conflict of interest or a bias for or against complainants in general or respondents in general, or this particular complainant or this particular respondent. Number 4, we have to, the typical, you're presumed to be innocent unless proven guilty. You're presumed that the respondent is not responsible for the alleged conduct until a determination is made at the conclusion of the formal procedure. 5, we may not restrict the ability, there's a no gag order. We may not restrict the ability of either party to discuss the allegations under investigation or to gather and present relevant evidence. So while we have certain duties to keep things confidential, we can't require the parties to keep it confidential, at least as far as what they want to speak about. The burden of proof, and this is on page 15, number 6. The burden of proof and the burden of gathering evidence sufficient to reach a determination is on us as a district and not on the parties. The standard of evidence that I've listed here is the preponderance of the evidence standard. Preponderance of the evidence standard means that after viewing all the evidence, you think it's more likely than not that the particular thing you've found is true. It's a 50-50 burden, just slightly over 50% is enough to find for it. I'm putting that in there because I think that is an appropriate standard here. However, you have the choice if you would prefer to have a clear and convincing evidence standard, which would mean that a person cannot be found to be responsible for discrimination or harassment unless there is clear and convincing evidence that he's responsible. I think that considering the scope of what it is that we're doing, and we're not imprisoning anybody or anything of that sort, and what we are trying to make proper responses to discrimination and harassment that might occur on our property or in our activities, that we don't want to, that we want to be able to reach a conclusion based on the preponderance of the evidence rather than having to go all the way to clear and convincing. Number 8, no investigator or decision maker may require, allow, rely upon, or otherwise use any questions or evidence that seeks disclosure of information that's protected under a legal privilege unless the person has waived the privilege. So for example, a doctor-patient privilege or attorney-client privilege, etc. Number 9 is even a little bit more specific, that no investigator or decision maker or other district personnel may access, consider, disclose, or otherwise use a party's medical records, basically medical or psychological records, or other medical professionals' records which are made in connection with treatment of the party, unless we obtain that party's voluntary written consent, and that voluntary written consent is specifically given for purposes of us doing a formal complaint proceeding. And also, if the party is not an eligible student, which means a student who's 18 or older, that we must obtain the written consent of the parent of the student, not just the student. 10, questions and evidence about a person's sexual predisposition or prior sexual behavior are generally not relevant, with exceptions described in that paragraph 10. And in 11, if at any point in the course of the proceeding and investigation, it's found that any of the conduct that is alleged in the formal complaint would not fit within the definition of sexual harassment as contained in this policy, even if that conduct was proved, or if that didn't occur in the course of our educational program or activities, or didn't occur to a person in the United States, so I don't think that's too likely, then it's the obligation of the compliance officer to dismiss the complaint with regard to that conduct right then and there, and not require them to have to proceed through the whole rest of the process. If it is dismissed, then the compliance officer has to send notice of the dismissal and the reasons for doing it to all parties, and to do so simultaneously. In addition, on page 16, item 12, there's the ability, although not the requirement, of the compliance officer to dismiss a formal complaint or allegations in the complaint at any time if, one, the complainant notifies the compliance officer that they want to withdraw, or if the respondent is no longer enrolled in our school and no longer employed by the district, or there are specific circumstances that prevent us from gathering sufficient evidence. And again, if there is a dismissal of the complaint, the compliance officer has to send prompt written notice to the parties, along with the reasons for the dismissal. And there's specific authorization given in number 13 to allow the compliance officer to consolidate formal complaints against more than one respondent or by more than one complainant. So we don't have to have multiple procedures that are all dealing with basically the same set of facts and circumstances. Now then, item part C on page 16. Again, new requirement of the new regulations. Upon receipt of the formal complaint, the compliance officer has to give written notice of certain things to the parties who are known, including a copy of the policy, the allegations against the respondent, including sufficient details that are known at the time, including who the parties are, and the conduct that's allegedly the cause of the discrimination, and the dates and locations of, if known, of the incidents, a statement that the respondent is presumed not responsible. Each party, specific notice that each party has the right to have an advisor of their choice. That advisor may, but doesn't have to be, an attorney. And that advisor may accompany them to any meeting or investigation or proceeding that the party himself would be attending. So the party always has the right to be accompanied by somebody to one of those physically present meetings. Then in D, upon receiving the formal complaint, the compliance officer will then authorize the building principal to investigate the formal complaint. And we have some language in here in cases where either the building principal or the compliance officer may not be impartial, in which case somebody else would be appointed to handle those things. Part E at the bottom of page 17, and then going on to page 18, also now lists a much larger scope of things that are the rights of the parties during the formal complaint procedure, including rights for participation by parents and guardians, rights for an opportunity to have that advisor, as I mentioned before, Here's another interesting new thing. A right to provide to a party whose participation is invited or expected written notice of the date, time, location, participants, and purpose of all investigative interviews, meetings, conferences, or hearings that the person's going to be involved in, with sufficient time for that party to be able to prepare to be at that meeting. So we can't just, for example, call the student in and say, I want to investigate this, talk to me now. It's like the investigator has to give this written notice in advance and give them enough time to prepare. An equal opportunity must be given to both parties to present witnesses and offer evidence. Here's something that's rather interesting. Number 6, number 6, provide both parties an equal opportunity to inspect and review any evidence obtained in the investigation that's directly related to the allegations in the complaint. And that includes evidence that the investigator has gotten while doing the investigation, but does not intend to rely upon in reaching a determination as far as who is responsible. And that includes both inculpatory and exculpatory evidence. And so that this may allow each party to give a meaningful response to the evidence before the conclusion of the investigation. So that's quite a lot of material we have to provide to the both parties and give them time to then give us a response to all that other evidence. Page 19, we talk about the investigation. And once again, the nature of the investigation is a lot more narrowly constrained than it used to be. And I think a lot of this are some of the things we've touched upon before in the nature of we have to let them know that nobody can retaliate against them for their participation in the process. Page 20, we talk about the investigative report, which is what the investigator is to complete after completing his investigation. Before he completes his report, he has to send each party and the party's advisor, if he has one, all that evidence that they had the right to inspect and review before in either electronic format or hard copy. So not only did they have the right beforehand to ask to inspect and review the material, but we now have an affirmative obligation to send it all to them before the investigative report is finalized and give them at least 10 days to respond to that in writing before the investigative report is concluded. So that's, again, a whole lot more work that the investigator has to do. The specific contents of what has to be in the investigative report are set forth starting at line 25 on page 20, and that's been expanded a little bit by virtue of the new rules. Page 21 talks about the determination. And now, since the compliance officer can't be involved in making the determination, I'm suggesting to you that the superintendent be the person to make the determination, which is actually the way we had it before, except that before the superintendent was the compliance officer. So now we have the assistant superintendent as the compliance officer who's handling all the background administration of this whole policy, and the superintendent who now picks up the investigative report that the investigator put out and now reviews all that evidence and makes the decision as far as what the appropriate response should be. And if, of course, the superintendent is the subject of the complaint or is not impartial rather, then the compliance officer is going to find some other person who's appropriate to fill that role.
Alert from mail, John.
And then there's a very lengthy discussion starting on line 27 on page 21 about what has to be in the written determination that the superintendent has to issue. It's pretty full report along the lines of what you'd expect to see in a court opinion in a lawsuit. And before reaching that written decision, the decision maker has to give both parties an opportunity to submit written relevant questions that they want asked of anybody else, which haven't been asked before, that they now want to present. Having seen the investigative report, they now have additional questions or additional evidence that they want to present. And so they have to be given the opportunity to submit that evidence. And we have to give them sufficient time to submit that evidence. And the decision maker has to review that evidence. Now, then there's the issue of appeal. Now, in the past, we allowed anybody to appeal on any basis that they wanted. But under the circumstances where we now have the superintendent making the long written determination, it seemed to me that that we've already gone through quite an extensive process already, and we really should not encourage appeals above and beyond what is actually required in the way of appeals. And what's required in the way of appeals is only if there was a procedural irregularity in the investigation process that affected the outcome of the matter, or if there was new evidence that wasn't reasonably available at the time the determination was made, or if there was a conflict of interest or bias by the compliance officer, an investigator, or the decision maker. So if any of those things happen, we would allow an appeal. But I don't find any particular reason why you would want to allow, after this extensive process that we've already gone through between an investigation and an investigative report and the separate decider and a separate opinion and written determination by the superintendent, to have yet another set of things unless there was really a need for it. Now, as far as who should be the person who handles the appeal, in the past, we had suggestions in there about whether it would be the compliance officer, but that can't be the compliance officer now. And it can't be the superintendent now, because the superintendent was the one who rendered the written determination in the first place. So, and it seemed to me that you really don't want to have a lower administrator having to be the one who overrules the superintendent. So since the issues that would be on appeal are really basically of a legal nature anyway, I'm suggesting to you that you, and I'm writing in this document here on line 17 of page 23, that you appoint me to be the person to hear any appeals if there are going to be any appeals. And that if I'm also not an appropriate person to make it, then the compliance officer would designate somebody in CLIU or a school district to handle that job. But it seemed to me, as a general matter, that you probably don't want to have the appeal decision overturning your superintendent to be done by somebody from outside the district. If that it would probably make more sense to have it be me than it would be to have you go outside the district if possible. Again, if you have any thoughts to the contrary, please let me know. Then on page 24, the section regarding district action, this is again sort of fleshing out requirements from the new regulations that the action that we take has to be what's needed to prevent retaliation, address the discrimination that was made, and the effect that that discrimination had on the complainant and the school program and employment environments. The remedies under this policy have to be designed to restore or preserve equal access to our program. they can include those things that we have called supportive measures. But remedies may also be disciplinary, punitive, or burdening to the respondent once you've gone through the whole written determination and appeals process. Again, we're noting here that any district action that's in the final decision of the decision maker appeals officer is to be implemented. However, anything that requires board action, such as expelling a student or terminating an employee, those things you have to, this public school code requires you to have, there's a hearing procedure, et cetera. So in those cases, those things would still have to go before the board for those appropriate hearings. This was trying to, again, the regulations require us to specify what the range of possible discipline might be. And so we said before, up to expulsion and termination. I felt it was sensible to just add so that we have something that calls the range, a suspension or expulsion or suspension or termination. And everything has to be consistent with the code of conduct. And the code of conduct might have some lesser penalties as well. Compliance officer has the obligation to implement the remedies, to document what was done, and to follow up at reasonable interviews whether what is done is sufficient to make sure that there is no discrimination or harassment going on in the district. And then part K, the final part here, again, is fleshing out some of our previous language on the needs for confidentiality and to what degree things aren't confidential. And I invite you just to read that a little bit clearer for yourselves. Does anybody have any questions at this stage on this rather lengthy revised policy?
No, thanks, Dave. I know this is a result of a lot of the federal, changes there in the U.S. Department of Ed, and I think it captures the new procedures that we have to have in place, for the protection of the school district. So a long process, but necessary.
It is, and it just really requires, a lot of work on the part of a lot of people in administration, especially the assistant superintendent. But the superintendent as well, and the building principals. There's just a lot of formality that has to be done now.
Okay, sounds good. So that's our tonight's meeting. We will have a first reading and hopefully an approval of that. And then we'll have next month will be the second reading and ultimate approval.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Nur.
E, athletics, Mr. Mall.
All right, thank you, guys. I'll try to be shorter than that with my report. We got rolling. Everything's been going pretty well. We started a couple weeks ago. We have probably close to 250 kids participating in fall sports right now. We've met as a league to go over schedules, go over what started out as the no spectator policy. Then it changed last week to the 250 and 50 or 250 and 25. And now, there's a possibility it's going to change again if any of this legislature passes through Harrisburg. So we are meeting with coaches this week just to kind of go over a game plan. Our league came up with basically a game day action plan for each particular sport. So we're going to go over that with the coaches, try to figure out what we need to do, what we're allowed to do. One of the things is each school is responsible to screen their athletes and coaches before they depart their school. Our league now does have a form that we're going to use and that needs to get signed and sent with each of the teams. The referees will be screened when they arrive at the site, just different stuff like that we've gone over as a league. Bob and I are meeting with Chief Kish next week to go over some security concerns with spectators, and kind of just go from there. I just will add the athletes and the parents were terrific this summer in getting the physicals. This is the first year that Lehigh Valley Health Network or one of our providers did not provide sports physicals at the school. And Lehigh Valley Health Network offered free physicals to all of our student athletes at their locations throughout the Lehigh Valley. And basically everyone got their stuff in on time or right around on time. So that was fantastic. Fantastic job by all of our parents and students. So that's basically where we're at. Hopefully we'll know more within the next couple days as to, what we can do, not do. And then Bob and I are gonna have some discussions once we know where we are, and then send out memos to each of the coaches and parents and spectators. We do have our home cross country meet. Our only home cross country meet of the year is next Tuesday at Bicentennial Park at 4:00. So that's our first event. And, we're looking forward to kind of getting rolling. The kids have been doing stuff since the end of June. So we're looking forward to actually getting into competitions.
Thank you, Mr. Mall.
Anybody have any questions or anything? All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your support.
You're welcome. 6F Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit Number 21, Mr. Dietrich.
Yeah, the IU had a meeting on the 17th of August. Unfortunately, I was on vacation and was not able to attend, so I don't have anything new to report tonight.
6G Borough of Catasauqua, Mr. Hine.
Yes, the borough meeting is tonight, but I attended virtually their executive meeting last week. And Chief Kish mentioned about some positive articles that our school resource officers are getting. And one of the articles came from the National Association of School Resource Officers Facebook page. And I looked back through that page, and you have to go back to April 21st, but it's a whole article from this national organization on how the officers were doing the chalk your walk, the book readings, and the flat pats in the borough, to try to keep the spirits of the children up through the summer. So it's a nice little article, all positive comments after the article. And, if anybody wants to see it, like I said, National Association of School Resource Officers on Facebook, and then you have to scroll back to April 21st. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hine. 6H Borough of North Catasauquas, Mr. Bashaw.
Carol, I have nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. 6I Hanover Township, Mrs. Reed.
I have nothing at this time.
6J PSBA liaison update, Mr. Panto.
I'll go with the others. I have nothing to report at this time.
6K Lehigh Career and Technical Institute update. I have nothing to report either. 7, approval of minutes from prior meetings. 7A, school board meeting held on August 11th, 2020. 8, approval of treasurer's report for August 2020. 9, approval of budget transfers, August 2020. 10, approval of payment of all AP bills, September 2020. 11, approval to ratify all expenses other than AP, August 2020. And I'll stop there. Do I have a motion?
Dale, so moved.
Second.
Jillian.
Any discussion? This is a roll call, please, Mrs. Reed.
Jason Bashaw,
Yes.
Jillian Emmert,
Yes.
Christy Cooper,
Yes.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Yes.
Dale Hine,
Yes.
Donald Panto,
Yes.
Lauren Cieslak,
Yes.
and Carol Cunningham.
Yes. Moving on to 12, financial. A, approval of miscellaneous insurance rates 2020-2021 school year. B, exoneration, tax collectors 2019-2020, interim taxes, and I'll stop there. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Dwayne.
Second,
Second, Dale.
any discussion?
I have a question.
Okay.
I just need clarification on what on 12A, the cyber policy, what exactly does that cover?
Lois, can I turn to you? I know you have more details than I do, but
Just
I know it does.
30-second high level.
Absolutely. Lois, are you okay with that? Or do you want me to jump
Yep.
in?
Nope. The cyber policy is a policy that we actually is a new policy. It will protect us for basically the obvious cyber attacks. It also has some features in there that if, especially with the 1700 iPads, that if we would have a malware that would take and cause damage to our laptops itself, that there's some coverage there that's real high level as in terms of just giving us some protection into today's world.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
This is a roll call, please.
Yes, Dwayne Dietrich,
Yes.
Jason Bashaw,
Yes.
Dale Heim,
Yes.
Christy Cooper,
Yes.
Lauren Cieslak,
Yes.
Jillian Emmert,
Yes.
Donald Panto,
Yes.
and Carol Cunningham.
Yes. 13A, personnel. 13A, approval for short-term substitute rate of $180 per day for Nancy Sankari, effective August 24th, 2020. 13B, approval for short-term substitute rate of $180 per day for Amanda Peters, effective August 24th, 2020. 13C, approval for short-term substitute rate per day of $180 per day for Kyle Davies, effective August 2020, August 24th, 2020. 13D, approval for substitute rate of $130 per day for Matthew Trust, effective August 24th, 2020. 13E, removal of the following substitute employees for the 2021 school year. 13F, substitutes. 13G, reapproval for the following substitutes for the 2021 school year. 13H, approval of FMLA for employee number 2135. 13I, appointment of extracurricular position 2020-2021 school year. J, resignation. 13K, intent to retire. Can you scroll down? 13A, change in employment status. 13M, appointment of certified and non-certified instructional aides.
So moved. Dale.
Okay, thank you.
Second, Dwayne.
Any discussion? This is a roll call vote, please, Mrs. Reed.
Donald Panto,
Yes.
Wayne Dietrich,
Yes.
Jillian Emmert,
Yes.
Dale Heim,
I'm going to abstain. I have some relatives on some of those lists.
Christy Cooper,
Yes.
Lauren Cieslak,
Yes.
Jason Bashaw,
Yes.
and Carol Cunningham.
Yes. No curriculum this evening. Moving on to board approvals. 15A, review of 2019 state ethics forms, statement of financial interest. 15B, reapproval of Innovative Arts Academy Charter School food service contract. And I'll stop there.
So moved, Dwayne.
Second, Jason Bashaw.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to point out that on that Innovative Arts Academy Charter School food contract, you're not reapproving it in exactly the same form as last time. There were some small, I would call cosmetic changes that were made and requested by IAACS and Dan Mothersbaugh, and that's why you're making it, you're reapproving it with those modifications having been made.
Thank you, Mr. Nur. Any discussion? This is a roll call, please, Mrs. Reed.
Wayne Dietrich,
Yes.
Christy Cooper,
Yes.
Lauren Cieslak,
Yes.
Jason Bashaw,
Yes.
Jillian Emmert,
Yes.
Donald Panto,
Yes.
Dale Heim,
Yes.
and Carol Cunningham.
Yes. 15D, C, of election of Pennsylvania School Boards Association PSBA officers. I'll move to Mr. Bashaw, please.
Thank you. The PSBA Officer Election Slate of Candidates 2020. PSBA members seeking election to office for the association were required to submit a nomination form no later than June 1st, 2020 to be considered. All candidates who properly completed applications by the deadline are included on the slate of candidates below. In addition, the Leadership Development Committee met via Zoom on June 5th and 6th to interview candidates. According to bylaws, the Leadership Development Committee may determine candidates highly qualified for the office they seek. This is noted next to each person's name with an asterisk. Voting procedure. Each member entity will have one vote for each officer. This will require boards of the various school entities to come to a consensus on each candidate and cast their vote electronically during the open voting period, August 23rd through October 11th, 2020. Voting will be accomplished through a secure third-party web-based voting site that will require a password login. One person from each member entity will be authorized as the official person to register the vote on behalf of his or her entity. In the case of school districts, intermediate units, career and technical centers, it will be the board secretary who will cast votes. In the case of community colleges, the president is designated as the authorized registrar. Special note, boards should be sure to add discussion and voting on candidates to their agenda during one of their meetings in August, September, or October before the open voting period ends. So the slate of candidates. President-elect, there is only one candidate, and that is David Heim, Parkland School District, Lehigh County.
This is a roll call, please, Mrs. Reed, and say the name of the person you wish to elect.
Donald Panto.
This is for president-elect
That is correct.
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Jason Bashaw,
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Christy Cooper,
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Jillian Emmert,
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Dale Heim,
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Lauren Cieslak,
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Dwayne Dietrich,
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Carol Cunningham.
David Hine, Parkland School District.
Okay, for Vice President, there are two candidates, Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District, Venango County. We also have Daniel O'Keefe, Northgate School District, Allegheny County.
This is a roll call, please, Mrs. Reed, and say the name of the person you wish to elect.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Sabrina Becker, Franklin Area School District.
Donald Panto,
Sabrina Becker, Franklin Area School District.
Lauren C. Slack,
Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District.
Christy Cooper,
Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District.
Jillian Emmert,
Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District.
Jason Bashaw,
Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District.
Dale Hine,
Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District.
and Carol Cunningham.
Sabrina Backer, Franklin Area School District.
Okay, for treasurer, we have Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District, Cumberland County.
Please say the name of the person you wish to elect. This is a roll call, please.
Dale Hine,
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
Lauren C. Slack,
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
Jillian Emmert,
Michael Gossert, Chamberlain Valley School District.
Jason Bashaw,
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
Christy Cooper,
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
Donald Panto,
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
and Carol Cunningham.
Michael Gossert, Cumberland Valley School District.
Okay, so at Western at Large, we have Marcia Pletta, Washington School District, Washington County. She is the only candidate.
This is a roll call, please. Mrs. Reed, say the person of the name you wish to elect.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Marcia Pieta, Washington School District.
Christy Cooper,
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
Jillian Emmert,
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
Dale Hine,
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
Jason Bashaw,
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
Lauren C. Slack,
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
Donald Panto,
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
and Carol Cunningham.
Marcia Pletta, Washington School District.
Section 2 advisor, there is one candidate, Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District, Elk County.
This is a roll call, please. Say the name of the person you wish to elect.
Lauren C. Slack,
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Jason Bashaw,
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Dale Hine,
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Jillian Emmert,
Amy Kennick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Donald Panto,
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Christy Cooper,
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
and Carol Cunningham.
Amy Kemick, Ridgeway Area School District.
Section 4 advisor, there's a single candidate, Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District, Lackawanna County.
Please, this is a roll call vote, please. Say the name of the person you wish to elect.
Jason Bashaw,
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Jillian Emmert,
Brian
Petula Lackawanna Trail School District.
Christy Cooper,
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Dale Hine,
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Donald Panto,
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Lauren Cieslak,
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Carol Cunningham.
Brian Petula, Lackawanna Trail School District.
Section 6 advisor, there is a single candidate, Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District, Huntingdon County.
This is a roll call vote, please. Say the name of the person you wish to elect.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Jason Bashaw,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Dale Hine,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Christy Cooper,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Lauren Cieslak,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Jillian Albert,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Donald Panto,
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
Carol Cunningham.
Andrea Christoph, Mount Union Area School District.
No applications were submitted for Section 8 advisor. Now we move on to PSBA Insurance Trust trustees. Member entities also are asked to vote for open trustee positions on the PSBA Insurance Trust Board. There are currently 2 seats open and 2 candidates. A member school entity can vote for up to 2 individuals. PSBA Insurance Trust provides complimentary travel accident insurance to all school directors from member school entities while on official school board business. As such, all member entities are considered participants in PSBA Insurance Trust programs and are eligible to vote. Trustee term ends December 31st, 2023. Choose up to 2 candidates for a 3-year term. The 2 candidates are Michael Fascinetto, Bethlehem Area School District, and Marianne Neal, PSBA past president.
This is a roll call, please. Say the names of the 2 people you wish to elect.
Up to 2 people.
Okay.
Donald Panto,
Well, Michael Fascinetto from Bethlehem Area School District and Marianne Neal, the PSBA past president.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Marianne Neal, PSBA past president. I'm going to forego my second vote.
Jillian Emmert,
Michael Fascinetto, Bethlehem, and Marianne Neal, the past president for PSBA.
Dale Hine,
Michael Fascinetto from Bethlehem Area School District and Marianne Neal, the PSBA past president.
Christy Cooper,
Michael Fascinetto, Bethlehem Area School District. Marianne Neal, PSBA past president.
Lauren Cieslak,
Michael Fascinetto, Bethlehem Area School District, and Marianne Neal, PSBA past president.
Jason Bashaw,
Michael Fascinetto, Bethlehem Area School District, and Marianne Neal, PSBA past president.
and Carol Cunningham.
Michael Fascinetto, Bethlehem Area School District, and Marianne Neal, PSBA past president.
School Board Secretaries Forum. All voting takes place online as part of the PSBA officers election ballot. It is a 2-part ballot. Forum Steering Committee, term ends December 31st, 2022. Choose up to 2 incumbents for a 2-year term. Stephen Saraki, North Penn School District. Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
This is a roll call, please. Say the name of the 2 persons you wish to elect.
Lauren Cieslak,
Stevens Rocky, North Penn School District, and Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
Jillian Emmert,
Steven Saraki, North Penn, and Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
Dale Hine,
Stephen Scrocky, North Penn School District, and Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
Jason Bashaw,
Stephen Skoraki, North Penn School District, Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
Christy Cooper,
Stephen Scrocky, North Penn School District, and Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Stephen Skoraki, North Penn, Tracy Long, Keystone Central.
Donald Panto,
Stephen Scrocky, North Penn, and Tracy Long, Keystone Central.
and Carol Cunningham.
Stephen Scrocky, North Penn School District, Tracy Long, Keystone Central School District.
And that is it, Mrs. Cunningham.
Thank you. $15D, approval of revised guidelines for returning to sports competition. And I'll stop there.
So moved with some adjustments to be reported by Mr. Nar.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Dwayne.
Any discussion?
Yeah, if I could. As I mentioned previously, I would like to suggest to you that you make a couple of minor modifications to the guidelines, primarily to reflect the fact that what was issued to you by Lehigh Valley Hospital and by Coordinated Health are their recommendations to you and guidelines. And now you're adopting them to be your policy as to what your procedures shall be for returning to sports competition. So first of all, there's a reference in the guidelines to limiting competition to within, quote, the region. And consistent with what you did over the summertime, I suggest that you modify that to say within District 11, if you're so inclined. Secondly, while a lot of these guidelines make reference to things that, quote, should be done by various people, since this is now our policy of what we're going to permit for returning to sports, all those references to should be done should be changed to must be done or shall be done. And third, the guidelines talk about compliance with state orders with regard to the numbers of spectators that could be present at an activity. And we are currently aware of legislation being proposed that would go beyond what the governor's and Department of Health orders are and grant additional discretion to school districts to make decisions about the number of spectators who can attend sporting competitions. And so what I would recommend is that if such legislation would be passed granting additional discretion to the school district, that the school board would authorize the superintendent to allow additional and further spectators as he sees fit, unless and until further action is taken by the school board on the matter.
Any discussion of Mr. Nur's proposals?
As making the motion, I would agree to all those proposals.
Do you agree, Dwayne?
I do, yes.
Thank you. This is a roll call, please.
Sorry. Wayne Dietrich,
Yes.
Christy Cooper,
Yes.
Lauren C. Slack,
Yes.
Jason Bashaw,
Yes.
Jillian Emmert,
Yes.
Donald Panto,
Yes.
Dale Hine,
Yes.
and Carol Cunningham.
Yes. 15E, approval of policy, first reading, policy 128. 15F, approval of additional revised van bus stops. I'll stop there. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Dwayne.
Second, Jillian.
Any discussion? If not, this is a roll call, please.
Donald Panto,
Yes.
Jason Bashaw,
Yes.
Christy Cooper,
Yes.
Jillian Emmert,
Yes.
Dale Hine,
Yes.
Lauren Cieslak,
Yes.
Dwayne Dietrich,
Yes.
and Carol Cunningham.
Yes. 16 old business, 17 new business, 18 commendations, 19 information items, and 20 correspondence. We'll put them all together. Mrs. Cochran, we'll start with you.
I would just be remiss if I didn't thank the board for their support with the iPad initiative and also for allowing us to take over the boardroom for a few weeks. It is clean, so maybe a face-to-face meeting in the future. That's
Thank
all
you.
I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Caress.
I would also reflect the same thing that Cathy just mentioned. The support has really been great. And as mentioned earlier, I think, at least speaking for myself, I'm pleased with the way things are going so far. There are still little issues here and there we'll have to work out, but I know we'll get there. As far as our big projects going in technology, aside from iPads, our telephone system upgrade is just about complete. AT&T will be returning on Thursday. Hopefully we can knock out the rest of the action items that need to be done there. Two-way communications has been in since the end of last week. They're in this week on the Viconnect surveillance system upgrades. That's going quite well, and I think we'll probably have that wrapped up early part of next week. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Mall.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Spangler and the board for all your support during this time with getting our student athletes back on the field and back doing summer workouts. I know Bob and I talk a lot, and we've talked a lot about, how difficult his meetings have been, how difficult the principal meetings have been, how difficult our athletic director meetings have been at the league level, as well as in a lot of leagues, and how it's caused a lot of issues and a lot of animosity towards one another in a lot of cases. And your support has been there the entire time, and our kids have been back, and I know they're very appreciative. Don's one of the coaches. I know, the coaches have worked hard, and I just thank everyone for their support. And we hope we can continue moving in a positive direction and get kids back on the field and in competitions and play a full season. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Mr. Dauberman.
Yeah, just a few things. October 2nd, we have picture day, so it's going to be interesting, but we'll make it work. So we're going to try to make that normal for the students. We are going to have our teachers, in lieu of back to school night, we're asking our Sheckler teachers to personally contact all of our parents. Now, our online teachers have already done that, but our in-person teachers are going to follow suit. So starting today through September 18th, they're scheduling live virtual video conferences with parents, just to kind of touch base with them, to see how their students are doing, to see if they have any questions about the approach that we're using with the in-person stuff and the online stuff. So we thought that was kind of the best route to take, considering the circumstances and all the questions that might be out there right now. And then finally, I thanked a lot of people, but including the board. I'd like to thank you for your support. Denise Shoemaker and Lisa Meckes, our two secretaries at Sheckler, have been working above and beyond their required hours to make this work. And quite frankly, without those two, it simply would not have happened. And our two guidance counselors, Kim and Kirsten, are just fantastic, reaching out to parents and being compassionate with their Ron DeMeo has been putting in countless hours as well to make all this work. And last but not least, our school nurse is under a lot of stress and pressure right now, considering all the circumstances, and she is handling the job fantastically. She's taking care of our kids and our parents and our staff, quite frankly. So I'd like to thank all those people, and we'll continue to move forward, and we'll be fine.
Thank you. Miss Enselman.
Yes, I have a couple items here. We have our virtual Meet the Teacher Night on Thursday, September 10th. And each of our staff members will be putting together a video. So each team will present a video introducing themselves, talking about the curriculum, what's going on in the school. And our specialists will be doing the same, related arts teachers, as well as Kim and myself. We also have Picture Day on September 11th. And then we also have Picture Day for our online students on the 15th. So we're going to go ahead and schedule our online students. If they want to, they can come on in and get their picture taken on the 15th. We have an early dismissal on the 16th. And then we have a couple items coming up in October. We actually have a picture retake day on the 23rd and a mobile dentist on the 29th. And we're going to have our students dress up for Halloween as we normally do every year. Just would like to conclude by thanking the school board for your support. We definitely would not have been able to do this without your support, without Bob and Christina. At the building level, I have a fantastic team. Guidance secretaries are awesome. We work together as one and couldn't have done what I've been able to do in the building without their help and support. And also to thank again Lois for her help and support in getting the building ready for our staff and students. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snug.
All right, good evening. I just want to say Picture Day for us is September 14th. And our first Rough Rider period right now is tentatively scheduled for September 23rd. So we can hopefully get students involved in student activities during the school day, whether it's virtual or in person. So we're looking forward to that. As far as final thank yous go, I know as principals, I think we've thanked everybody. I certainly want to thank the board. But if there's anybody that we missed saying thank you to directly, I just want to say a genuine thank you. And we're moving forward doing something that not many districts are capable of doing right now. And we're able to do this because of everybody's hard work that everybody's putting in. And I just want to give a genuine thank you to everybody for the support and the patience that has gone into planning this school year and making it happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Lutz Demling.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we have implemented our online student registration process for new students, so we're excited about that. I also wanted to mention we have Keystone exams coming up at the end of this month. These are the spring Keystones that have been rescheduled for this fall. So our 8th grade Algebra 1 students, as well as our Algebra 1 biology and literature students will be taking those Keystones. I wanted to give a shout out to Dawn Fisher and Ashley Schmidt for being instrumental in supporting, our online programs and also troubleshooting with some of our technology issues this past week or so. So they've been a real help. And finally, I too would like to just commend all of our stakeholders for a really great school reopening. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Miss Emmert.
I just want to say thank you to everybody as well. Thank you to the teachers and the instructional assistants and the custodians and the cafeteria workers for working extra hard and doing things that we've never experienced. And thank you to Mr. Spangler for being the spearhead for everything and the voice of reason to not only our district, but the whole Lehigh Valley with the superintendent. So I think that speaks volume. And just thank you to anybody else.
Thank you. Mrs. Cecilak.
Yep, just wanted to, reiterate what everyone else has said. Thank you to everyone that's making this work and for everyone's hard work. And it's certainly a hard time, but we're showing that we're resilient and we're consistent and we're going to be okay. So we're doing a great job. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Mr. Hine.
Nothing at this moment, thank you.
Mr. Dietrich.
Just to reiterate, thanks to the entire school community, everybody, administrators, students, etc. Sounds like the launch was a very successful one. We're going to persevere, and Rough Riders wouldn't do it any other way. So
Thank
that's
you.
all I got.
Mr. Bashaw.
I sit here very envious as an educator that the Catasauqua Area School District was able to go back full in person and hold it successfully and safely, and still simultaneously have a virtual program. That's a true testament of every single person in the school district, including the students, the staff, the community, administration, support staff. I'm just so overwhelmed and so proud to be part of this community. And I've learned so much talking with Bob, talking with multiple stakeholders in this district. I've learned so much as an administrator to help my school district move forward. So thank you so much for teaching me, and thank you so much for doing everything you're doing for all the children of the Catasauqua Area School District.
Thank you. Mr. Panto.
Well, I certainly do agree with what everyone has said. I'm going to give you a little taste of what I know from firsthand experience of 30 young men who have devoted a lot of time and energy this summer, not knowing what they were going to be able to do. And we're greatly appreciative of all that you, my colleagues, do, especially what Mr. Mall and Mr. Spengler have done. And I know the other teams are just as happy, because it's a piece of normality that they didn't think they were going to have. So I can tell you firsthand, there's a bunch of young Rough Riders ready to go, and we're following the rules. They're doing a great job following the rules. I listen to our principals talk about that in school, and we reinforce it on the field that they better do well in school and, behave themselves and do good in their classwork, because it's all going to be different and challenging. But now we're 2 weeks, into our second week here, and it all looks good. So I just want you to know that the end result there, and I know many of you do, but it's a real good thing that we've done together. So just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. Mr. Nur.
I think I've talked enough tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Spengler.
I'd like to reiterate that Mr. Nerd did speak enough tonight. We're going to cut him off for a few months now.
Second that, yeah.
But I'm only kidding, David. But in all seriousness, you guys really have captured, I couldn't add anything more to what each of you, administration and board members, have already stated. And I couldn't possibly list all of the people that have contributed to where we stand today. But just, I guess, let it be at, all of our stakeholders, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, our parents, our guardians, our police force, our local community leaders, our nonprofit leaders, our churches, our places of worship, our teachers, everyone has come together. What is this, like my 18th year as superintendent here, and I've been with many of you for a long time. Carol, Dale, Dave Nur, my administrative team. Never would I have thought, we've been through tough times, but never would I have thought we'd be through something like this. Something that results in us retooling our operation, retooling our school district in a matter of months. But the strength and the reason it has worked is because we truly always pull together. We put down our guards and we just do what we need to do. And, hey, through the way, there are bumps, there are potholes. We know this, but the bottom line is we know that we're in the potholes and we're in the bumps, and we know that it's going to get better. So we get through that and we come out on the other side much better. So our organization is better as a result. We hope and we think we're serving our community well, but it's, a two-way relationship, and it's really been tremendous being part of this process. And I thank every single person involved in this. So, we're just all parts of the team. So I appreciate everything this board has allowed us to do. the leadership, the vision, the input that you've given us. It's invaluable. You don't realize just how valuable you are until you get results like we have right now. So thank you. And Mrs. Cunningham, there are no comments or questions on the website that have been submitted by community.
I would just like to say thank you to everyone for the tremendous start of the school year. Next meeting dates, Tuesday, October 13th, 2020, 7 p.m. School board meeting. Wednesday, November 4th, 2020, 4 o'clock building and grounds, 5 o'clock p.m. academics committee meeting, and 6 o'clock p.m. athletic committee meeting. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move, Dwayne.
Second?
Jillian,
All those in favor? Signify by
Aye.
saying aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.